What's up, Biker Bar? I'm Robert, and this is episode 102 of the Biker Bar Podcast live stream. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I know it feels like it's been a long time since I've been on. I don't know what it was last weekend. I think there was something going on. For some reason, I wasn't having a show last weekend. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, we're here this week. And unfortunately, we're not going to be here next week because I'm going to Sedona with a bunch of other people. So I'm sure you'll be seeing all the other YouTubers posting all their stuff about Sedona and whatnot coming up this week, and Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to catch some of that from me, swing by my Facebook page at BikerB1 or my Instagram at BikerB1 and give me a follow, because it's really fun, kind of putting some extra content out there for you guys to interact with. It's a lot easier to interact, I feel like, on that platform than it is on YouTube. Or those of you guys that are listening to a podcast, obviously there's no way to really comment or anything like that. So if you swing by Instagram or Facebook, give me a follow. And then you can kind of see what's going on for free at that. If you'd like to help support the channel, I'd really appreciate you swinging by Patreon. There is a couple of tiers there. You can sign up for $1 a month. That's $12 a year. I probably lose that much money in change a year. So I feel like it's a reasonable amount, and you can help out the channel. That would be great. There's also a couple other tiers you can sign up for. You can get some extra content. You can get a bunch of really cool merch, some fun stuff. So go check that out. Patreon.com/biker, B1KER. And that is that. So this week we're going to have episode 102 with TRP Cycling. And I'm going to bring on our guest right now. And we have Jerry, who is better known as Jumpin' Jerry, apparently. How's it going, man?
Hey, Robert, how's it going? Cheers. And,
good.
Touching upon your intro, last week was Halloween. So that's why we both couldn't do that.
That's what it was. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was.
I was trying to remember too. And I'm like,
I actually ended up having a last minute trip to Las Vegas. So it was kind of really cool that I didn't have anything booked because of the holiday. So a family member of mine ended up deciding to go out and get married real quick. And so I was like, I'm in.
Nice.
So that was super fun. So I noticed on your signature, and you had just said it a minute ago when we were chatting, that your nickname is Jumpin' Jerry. Where did the nickname come from?
So many years ago, in the 90s, a partner of mine, who actually, funny, he's my boss here at TRP in the US. At one time, he owned a bike shop, and for a promotion, I went to work for him. And for a promotion, he knew I was a BMX guy, and he's like, "Hey, there's this event that we put on in Idaho, and it, it's kind of a big deal. It's called Dairy Days, local thing." He's like, "Jump a car. We'll just, build a little hill out in the parking lot and kind of do a promo for the bike shop." And one thing led to another, and the next thing you know, I'm jumping 4 cars.
You turned into Evil Knievel.
And it was in Twin Falls, where I've stood on the ramp that goes over the Snake River.
Wow!
At that time, and so it ended up being, a huge thing for Dairy Days. And one of the guys that worked at the shop actually took pictures from on top of the roof. He is a guy who writes articles and whatnot, and he put together a thing, and it was basically bought and published by Bike Magazine in 1997.
Right.
And from there, basically, I was hired to do jumps for Specialized at the Cactus Cup, and I did a failed jump in front of a bunch of people in the late 90s at Mammoth when I was there racing the Kamikaze. Just one thing led to another. So that's kind of how people know me as Jumpin' Jerry.
Oh, neat. So you have a long background of biking. So what were you doing?
So, originally I started out as a BMX guy. Started racing when I was 9 or 10, when growing up in Bakersfield.
Oh, so from SoCal then. Okay.
Yeah. And from there, kind of transitioned naturally as mountain bikes came along. Came up, started work, very young, 13, 14, sweeping floors at a bike shop, typical
Uh-huh.
for a guy who ends up in the industry, right? And loves
Right.
bikes to pay for my bikes besides my paper route. So,
Right. Right.
from there, basically from there, raced for many years, and then mountain bikes came along in the late 90s or 80s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the early 90s, transitioned to primarily racing mountain bikes and just
Oh, wow.
grew it from there. So,
Right
um,
on. Yeah.
it's cycling's always been, one of my favorite things to do. And anything I can do to help, get other people, into it,
Right
that's
on.
one of my things
Yeah.
I love to do.
Yeah. Similar for me. I mean, I was always into BMX too. And right around the early 90s is whenever I got into mountain biking as well. And um, yeah, here we are now. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
right. I mean, honestly, Robert, it starts. I think back and I'm like, that was my freedom. I
Yeah.
jump on my bike, and at that time, the world wasn't what it is today. Uh,
Right.
you hang out with your buddies, go to the dirt lot, build jumps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. For us, it was like ride all over town and, oh,
yeah,
in this one guy's backyard, you can shoot off there through the alleyway. Because I grew up in Pennsylvania, there's no like fences or anything, so you'd be riding through people's yard to like hit
right.
some drainage ditch in their backyard, and jump over the alley or build some ramp down next to the school or something. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
yeah, it was just
I
a
mean,
matter of like,
I think that's the normal thing for most of us who stay in it for a long period of time. I would imagine a lot of the people you talk to, that are similar to us, it's a very similar story.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, when mountain bikes first came out, it was really I made a joke about it somewhere on my other channel for a long time ago. It was like basically back then it was like a road bike with just a little bit bigger tires,
It
you know?
the closest thing I can say modern bike wise would be taking a gravel bike and putting flat bars.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
now the geometries and the brakes and drivetrain are better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 The mountain bikes, though, on the other hand, oh my God, it's like,
It's
it's,
radically different. I remember the first bike I got, which was fully rigid, put
yeah.
some of the first suspension forks on it. And as much as we thought they were really something,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing to see what we have now and how much of a difference it makes in the ride.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It really makes me wonder, like, would have been like, what would have been like to hand a bike to, like, I don't know, somebody like Chris Ritchie or something like that, back in the day, that's like a new bike now, just been
Right.
like, or Gary Fisher or something, to be like, how about it, dude? See what you think now, like what
It's,
those guys would say.
yeah, you never know. I mean, if you don't go too far back, there was just a recent comparison with, Steve Pete,
Uh-huh.
one of his, 10, 15-year-old bikes, and he wasn't that much slower. But he
Yeah.
said the newer bike, as we all know, at speed and doing things was just way more confidence inspiring.
Yeah. 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 There's definitely, I know some of the stuff that I ride. I mean, in my mind, I think that there's no way I would have been able to ride it on those old bikes, but honestly, people rode some hairy shit back in the day, and I still see guys, out there like on some single speed, hard, rigid bike, just doing crazy shit. So I guess, you give people enough time, they're going to do it no matter what. Right.
There's like any sport or anything, the pilot or rider input is a huge part.
Right. Right. Definitely.
So,
So, how'd you end up working with TRP?
so quite a few years ago, like I say, the gentleman who's now, my boss is a good friend. And early on in TRP, he knew I was racing at the time full time as a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And we had done development projects together and worked together when we both worked at RockShox
Uh-huh.
in the late 90s. He was in a sales position, basically sales manager, and I worked in different parts of the company, including product development and doing stuff in repair department, and eventually going into test lab and testing the products and breaking it. But he knew that I kind of had some background in the product development and writing reports. So he brought me on early in the step from Tectro to Tectro Racing Products, TRP, in doing, ride testing and reporting of what the products felt like, and just making suggestions of what felt good, what could be improved. And just over the years, I've always gotten to ride variations of the product as it's been developed. So that helps, primarily on the gravity and mountain bike side, but a little on BMX side as well.
Okay.
So a little bit of both. But the funny thing is, between Tectro and TRP, virtually we produce, every single kind of product you would need, braking wise, from a V brake, road bike brake, cyclocross brake, mountain bike brake, and from high to low. So it's pretty diverse amount of stuff that we do.
Didn't you guys bring out a new brake this year, or just recently?
So about a little more than a year ago, we brought out the DHR Evo, which is our flagship brake, that we developed over the years from a number of our other brakes. And it pioneered a lot of things that now some of the other companies are catching up to, one of them being a thicker rotor structure and a little wider caliper. But that brake has been the one that honestly has gotten us the most notice. Honestly, it was one of the products that when I rode the prototypes, I was just utterly amazed at how far we had come, and how, strong the brake was, and just very solid and everything. So
what makes it different?
Huge difference in the amount of flow we're getting through the system compared to the previous model we had, which was called the DHR. That was the previous version that we had made a different caliper to have more flow. We had basically set up a more robust system with that unit. And then through testing, we found, by making some other alterations in both the flow of the caliper, as well as changing the hose diameter, making it a little smaller and being more reinforced, as well as a lighter oil, and actually a smaller piston assembly than its predecessor, we were able to force a lot more flow through the system to give it more power, more modulation, and more heat dissipation.
I don't understand how does that work with it getting smaller?
It's if you want to think about it. The easiest way I can explain it to someone that I always do is, think of a garden hose. Go outside, you're playing in the summer, squeeze the end of that garden hose down, and it makes the water faster. That's the basic principle, of course.
Okay, that makes sense.
But that's probably the easiest way to.
I'm sure there's some science behind it, but
there's some serious science, but I leave those to the engineers.
Right. Yeah, that's good enough for me, man.
I know when I ride it, it feels awesome. So it is a lot, and the amount of inquiries and new people wanting to try the brake has been higher than I've ever seen working with the company ever.
So that would be like a brake line or like a brake product that's like in line with like Code and Saints or something like that?
Exactly. So it's a very high level product. So we're talking a World Cup type brake. Not that us regular mortals can't use it as well, of course.
100%.
But we wanted to have something that was on par with our competition, and also have some features that actually, I feel, give us some advantages.
So then the rotor being thicker, then that's just allowing it to dissipate heat better, or?
It does a whole bunch of things. Heat dissipation is one of the hugest ones, of course. The other thing that I found by using it is the feel of the brake feels so much more solid when you grab a finger to or full, depending on how you like to do it. The thing I have also noticed too, over using them and going and working with some of the athletes and whatnot, is that we don't seem to see the types of warping in the brake or distortion because of the heat, because it has more material. As well, it's quite a bit more resistant to rock strike as well, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know, just being more rigid. You wouldn't think that a half millimeter of material roughly would make that kind of difference. But when you think about the percentage of what that is towards what a normal brake is, that jump in thickness is quite a bit.
Because what's a normal one's like 1.8 or something like that?
1.9, depending on the manufacturer. But now we're seeing, of course, manufacturers offering 2.0 and in that range.
And what's yours?
Ours is 2.3 to start.
2.3. Okay.
Yeah. So,
and then how far down would that go until you need to replace it?
The call out for replacement on that, usually I would suggest not going below like a 2.0. But you know, normal 1.8 is going to usually be tossed at 1.5. So it's pretty similar in that.
Yeah. It makes about sense.
You know, that's my recommendation.
I would imagine at that point you're going to start noticing your brakes fading more and stuff like that too. So
it actually, at that point, it almost is more because you've dug into the brake track so far that things are really settling in. So you're building a ridge up to that point. So they just don't feel as nice, because if you want to think about it, you're always grinding that material down in the brake track,
right?
Making grooves. And once you get it so grooved out, it's really nice to put something fresh on there.
Yeah.
It feels so much better. Doesn't have the grabbiness to it.
Yeah.
Just like when you put a fresh rotor and pad on and it's nice. It's just like, oh, it's quiet.
Yeah.
It feels nice when I grab the lever. It's not steering, you know, all those little things that you know happen over time, and is just due to wear. It's you know, it's an item. These items are wear items, just like a tire or a chain or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely just about due to get new brakes or put some new rotors and pads and stuff on. And I can, you know, for sure feel that. And so I'm looking forward to what you're talking about, because I've definitely noticed lately. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm running Saints. You know, you met me in person. I'm a big guy. So like to me, it's like Saints or nothing, you know, or like at least something like that, you know, along that line, as far as like a heavy duty brake, you know, because at the end of the day, like I got, you know, 100 pounds on some guys that are riding. So they're definitely, people are always like, why are you running? Like for a long time, I've run 203s front and back. And people are always like, why are you running so much brakes? And it's like, well, you don't weigh like I do, dude. Like,
And it just that is the thing. It really depends so much on the application, the rider. And then now it's not only the rider weight we have to contend with, but now with like e-bikes, you've got a whole nother factor of the bike weighing 20, 25 pounds more than
right.
You know, so that's a huge other thing. I mean, and to be honest, the development of why we went to the thicker rotor actually stemmed from the e-market and finding that rotors were heating up extremely hot, especially with the loads of not only EMTB bikes, but also cargo bikes, especially in Europe. Once you put a heavy rider, cargo, and then the weight of the bike, they have 300 to 400 pounds.
Wow. What's a cargo bike?
So a cargo bike, typically there's a lot of those in Europe where you're going to have a rider. There's all kinds of various types, but a real simple one would be a rider with a bike behind a cargo area down below. And then usually, you know, an area with the front wheels. So some are 2 wheels, some are 3, but basically,
I know what you're talking about then.
Yeah, basically it's a way, especially in urban settings, a lot of places in Europe, cars aren't allowed, especially in small town areas and things like that. So there's a lot of delivery services that use, you know, cargo bikes, or I see them all the time here in Boise, bikes that'll have a rider, and then in front of it's kind of a cargo area where you carry the kids.
Or your like groceries or whatever.
Normal analog, but a lot of these are e-bikes. And so there again, you've got more weight in the motor, transmission, battery, everything.
Yeah. So do you guys have a separate like line for e-bikes specifically, or do you guys just recommend then that brake?
We do make some brakes that are definitely designed more towards the e-bike market that actually use a different hose routing. So they're closer to the handlebar. It's what we call a clean cockpit. And it's a way to keep all the cables from getting in the way of everything like that. And so we do make a few different models that are very e-bike specific. And that's mainly due to the bigger levers and the layout of the cockpit. And then most of the time, the e-bikers that are using the EMTB brakes are using, basically now we actually have 3-4 models that use the 2.3 rotor system. And that's all the way from what's called now the base model, which is the Slate Evo. That's where they start, which is
so that's and that's just a mountain bike line there, or
exactly. So most all of that's all mountain for the standard brakes that we have, which would be Slate Evo on up to the Quadium 2.3 SE, then to the Trail Evo, and then onto the flagship DHR Evo.
Gotcha. What do the slates run like for
so the Slate Evo is something that recently came out. It's only been out roughly for a couple months, and that one was a take from our standard Slate T4 that we've had in the line for years. Great 4-piston trail brake. And what we did was we paired a new caliper with that uses the 2.3 rotor, and put that together, and they're $139 per line.
Oh, wow. That's not bad at all.
No. So that's kind of our entry level or gateway point to get into having something that would work for, say, an e-bike or, someone that wants a little more brake and a little more rotor, especially for a bigger rider. But not everyone wants to, they don't ride as much, or they don't want to break the bank.
Yeah. 100%.
You guys are just getting into it, but they're like, you get a bigger guy and they're like, I need more brakes, but I don't want to spend $500.
Yeah.
If they can get into a nice set of brakes for $300 to $350 and they make that much difference, it's a home run. It just works really well.
I think a lot of people don't know that they have shitty brakes.
Well, it's like anything, right? It's just like when you have an old car and then you get in a new one and you drive it, or more. So it's when you've had a bike for years, right?
Yeah.
You're going out riding with your buddies. He just got this new machine, right?
Right.
I just got the 2021, blah, blah, blah. Go,
right.
Robert, go ride it. Go check it out. Okay, man, let me check it out. Yeah. And you ride it and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's all tight.
Yeah.
It shifts really nice.
Yeah.
Brakes work good. It's that kind of thing. So until you try something, usually you won't know the difference.
Yeah.
You've got to have perspective, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's what I always tell.
Once you get that, then you're screwed.
Yeah, right. Then you're like, take my money.
But I always find that yes, it's a hard pill to swallow. But if it helps you ride and you have more fun, then you're getting the most important part of riding, period.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always tell people that like you don't know you have shitty brakes till you get new ones, and then you're like, oh wow, those are really good, so and I don't know, to me, like I like would give up different things on the bike over having like to have really good brakes. Like to me it's just I want to stop when I want to stop, and I want to be able to push it as far as I can until I'm stopping, and what I mean, like and it really, like, it'll blow me away whenever I get a demo bike or a friend's bike or something that has like a much lower level of braking on it, and it just like you get on the trail and you're like, I can't even ride like this. Like you like it really is shocking how much it changes the way you come into corners, the features, or everything, like even just feathering them on some tight technical spot,
Yeah, just the confidence level that you have when things work right. I think for me, I mean, every rider's different, right?
Right.
Brakes and suspension are my two things.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, part of the reason I was a suspension technician for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
just I thought that stuff was really cool. But I knew that those two things, I think, besides having your contact points, pedals, grips, those things set up the way that you're comfortable. I think hands down, to go from something that works to something that does not, it makes the most difference. The suspension is what's making you glued to the ground or not.
Right.
And the brakes are what's keeping you from dying or not.
Right. It's a safety feature, man.
If brakes didn't matter, we'd also be riding V brakes. Okay.
Right. Yeah, totally. And that's freaking like, it's just crazy to think about. I remember back, like we were talking earlier, riding back in the 90s and stuff, like V brakes were that was the only brakes you had. And I mean, I rode in Pennsylvania, it was wet and muddy, and those things barely worked,
right. We were spoiled. We were out here in the dry zone.
Right.
The West. You're out in the, the deepness, but the guys, up in Seattle, same thing, but I remember in the 90s having downhill bikes, of course, with V brakes.
Right.
Now we would never do that.
Right.
That's all we had. And at that time we were like, oh, it's the best stuff we have. So let's just rock it. Hope it doesn't rain.
Right. Yeah. So you were talking about your rotors. Do you guys have different levels of rotors, or do you have just like the one particular one, or how's it work with your rotors?
So are we talking just the 2.3 or across the board with our stuff?
I guess let's start with the 2.3 and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I would say, in the 2.3, we basically have I'll say three versions of that.
Okay.
One, the most popular, is going to be our one piece, what we call the R1 series. And so it's a one piece stainless steel rotor. That's the rotor I tend to run on everything myself because it's simple, it's strong, does everything it needs to do. And the one thing about the stuff for now with the 2.3 is we do not do anything below 180 millimeter. Okay. So with Tectro and TRP, both manufacturers, Tectro is our parent company. All of our stuff is more based size-wise for our rotors on the Shimano model, just so you know. So we do everything's 160, 180, 203 above, right?
Got it.
In the 2.3 rotors, we do 180, we do 203, and then we do 223.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And then we do that R1 as our most popular. The other version we do is we actually do a two-piece version in 180 and 220, or excuse me, 180 and 203. That is an alloy carrier 6-bolt with a, stainless steel rotor track mounted into it. Very similar to that two-piece is also our two-piece center lock.
What's the advantage of having two pieces there?
A lot of the guys like the two-piece, one for the look, a little bit lighter weight is another version of why people like those. Some people feel that they stay truer because, there's a variance between having the spines that are alloy and then tabbing up to the brake track. You don't transfer that heat down that because there's a separation. I personally just like the one-piece rotors. I think they're the simplest. But the cool thing is we like to have different choices for people because some people want a little more bling. Some people like that look. And then if you have center lock, that's the only way to go because you need the carrier. So it's kind of a choice. The same thing with our 1.8 rotors that we do through the line. We offer them the same type, a one piece, a two piece, and then a center lock.
You said at the beginning that when you guys were developing that brake that you changed the fluid. What did you guys do there?
Yeah, we found that with the added power of the brake and the added heat that we're generating from the friction, having more power, that we found we needed to change not only the viscosity, but also the heat management of the fluid. So it's still a mineral oil. It's a lighter viscosity, so it moves faster, which also helps with that fluid flow. Back to that 9mm piston that we have, shovels more oil. But also, it also has a higher boiling point than the old fluid, which that's always kind of been a contention amongst people of, hey, mineral oil only goes so far in the heat. If you can't manage the heat, then you lose power, right?
Right. So that's why like SRAM uses the fluid that they use, the dots.
Exactly. So when we designed this system, we said, hey, let's go ahead and improve our fluid. And the great thing is that our fluid that is newer that we've had, it's almost a year and a half now. We changed over that. It's across the board in all our brakes now. It actually is retrofittable back into the old stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's another thing that we try to do at TRP and Tectro as much as we can is try and make things backwards compatible. It's not always going to work, but
I think you told me, go ahead.
We try as much as we can to make things cross compatible and backwards compatible to make them more lifespan and just easier to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, and overall, I mean, who wants to get like forced into having to like buy something new because the company decided to bring something else out that's different now? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, that part's nice as well. I feel like that's taking care of your customers. So that's definitely like a commendable thing as well.
It's something that's part of the foundation of the company. They just like to do things in that manner, which I think is a horrible way to do things.
Right.
And just that's kind of one of their philosophies.
Yeah. That's rad. So I think you told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were at Sea Otter when we met, you say that some of your stuff was actually interchangeable with Shimano, like you were saying, like, oh, if you can't find a brake line or something like that, or was that you that was telling me that?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had dealers, especially in the last year, buy hoses and fluid from us, to put in Shimano because they couldn't find the parts, even down to our brake pads. There's a lot of the brake pads that are both in the Tectro side and the TRP side that will fit the Shimano. So for instance, all of the 4-piston brakes that TRP makes, that is the same size pad as what you would find in your Z or your Saint.
Oh, okay.
So there again, with the shortages the last 18 months.
Yeah, no, that's good information to know. You know what I mean?
It's been very helpful. We wanted, so this is another interesting thing about TRP. They wanted to model some of the spare parts that we could along the Shimano model to basically allow people across the world, if they got into our stuff, to have maybe some parts that would be available to them, because we weren't always as growing as we are now.
Yeah,
with dealers everywhere. And it was never a knock on Shimano or anything. It was just more that we were trying to make our stuff more accessible for our end user by making what at the time was, your probably the most likely thing to find in the field. Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's, the religious argument of, Shimano versus SRAM and, why and whatnot. But like, you guys are definitely coming in hot. I definitely hear people talk about your brakes a lot more than, I mean, just a few years ago, I wouldn't have, you know what I mean?
We're trying really hard. I mean, we have a great team. I mean, both in Taiwan, here in the US, in Europe. It's a full team effort. And the other guys, man, truth be told, we all know they make good stuff. We'd like to be a legit option for people. And I think we offer some things that you know, are a little more accessible for
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
a little more down to earth.
So you had mentioned a few times, maybe we can clear it up for people that don't know the difference. What's the difference between Tectro and TRP?
Basically, if you want to think of it in the simplest terms,
Mm-hmm.
Tectro is Toyota, TRP is Lexus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Got it.
It's that. Tectro has been around 35 plus years. They are a family-owned company in
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan, and they have grown. We're actually the second largest brake manufacturer in the bicycle industry, believe it or not.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and what has happened is,
So is that like one of those cases where like they're actually manufacturing like brakes for other companies as well too, or?
no, we primarily just do our stuff, and
Oh, okay.
we have so much stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It'd be very hard.
Yeah.
But more than anything, it was the type of thing where they've always built. Tectro has a reputation for building a very solid product. It's
Mm-hmm.
used highly throughout the industry, primarily as an OEM supplier, and it got to the point where they realized, hey, we're doing a good thing. We have a great reputation, but what can we do to take it to that next level?
Mm-hmm.
How can we be a more desirable thing past the standard OEM kind of mid-level down? We
Right.
want to get to be that mid-level to the top.
Right.
And so that is where TRP comes in. Tectro is our parent company. TRP is our racing and development end.
Mm-hmm.
That's our higher end stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's funny because a lot of people, until I tell them that we are Tectro or that we are Tectro Racing Products, TRP,
Mm-hmm.
many people don't correlate the two.
Yeah.
And once I tell them, they're like, oh, crap. I didn't even realize that was the same thing. I'm like, yeah, same thing. This is one arm and this is the other arm.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So it's just like your upper end line.
yeah.
Oh, that's pretty rad.
So it's kind of that amount of manufacturing power and experience in the factories to be able to attain this, and also the people there that do everything as well. Not only the guys on the manufacturing line, but the engineers and stuff, and then we back it up with our different offices around the world.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have models through like gravel, road, mountain, like all that stuff?
Yeah, we're expanding in gravel, lots in mountain, plenty in road, but it's a constant development, and that's not only ongoing with the brakes, but within the past few years, we've also started to manufacture different derailleur and shifter componentry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So,
Yeah.
so what's going on there?
Fun thing that we've started to work upon and is a growing thing, which is just awesome.
So do you guys have a couple of different lines of like shifters and derailleurs, or is it just kind of like one product line now?
So for right now, the first offering that most of us have been riding for the past almost 2 years now is our TR12, which is our 12-speed, all mountain enduro shifter and derailleur, and then we also have a 7-speed for downhill and for dirt jump and that kind of application with a short cage. As things go along in the next few years, you're going to see more from us. I don't want to be too specific with the details, because
my assumption would be that there's going to be something electronic. That would be my guess. I mean, it seems like that's the direction
all I can say, Robert, is there's a lot of stuff coming, and I wish I could tell you a lot of it and how cool it is, but I'll just say that it's definitely worth keeping an eye on us. Because I believe we'll start releasing some of the new stuff into 2022.
So probably something that would debut at Sea Otter next year or something like that.
That's I believe where we're at, but not being on the marketing end of things, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah,
I'm more of your man in the streets.
So no, I totally get what you're saying. I'm not holding you to it. calling the New York Post tomorrow and ask them to
Mhm.
write a story up. Jerry said,
Yeah, Jerry said, and you're like, I don't believe that guy.
right,
You don't
right,
know Jerry.
right. So, no, that's rad. That's super
Yeah,
exciting.
it's.
So what's different with the shifter and the derailleur? I mean, what do you got? Is there anything that like is standout, or you guys just feel like you have a solid product? Or
I think we have a solid product, but there's a few different things of the current model that definitely I noticed right from the first time riding it.
Mhm,
One, the shift, upshift and downshift mechanism, is really solid feeling when you're
mhm,
shifting it. Has a good clunky chick,
mhm.
clunky
Click.
shift to it, not
Yeah,
clunky,
yeah,
but a solid shift to it as far
yeah.
as detent,
Uh-huh.
which is nice to always have a good feel to it.
Mhm.
The lower paddle is adjustable to kind of get it to where your thumb rests in the right spot between
Oh,
the
that's cool.
upshift and downshift.
Yeah.
It is a multiple shift upshift, which is great. And just
Oh, I
the
was gonna ask that. So it's not just a
paddle,
single click.
yeah, it's a multi shift for the upshift. And the nice thing is the swing of it, instead of having more of an around feel to it, it feels more straight on as you push it. So
Oh, interesting.
it feels like it takes less effort and it's just more straightforward and just
Yeah, yeah,
it's always kind of like I ride it and I'm even in a corner or something, I feel it's right where I need it.
yeah.
So it's just very comfortable to me. In the derailleur, some pretty, different stuff going on in the effect that it's got a very unique clutch mechanism
Mhm.
in that instead of it just being coming as it swings through to tighten the chain tension, a lot of them they tend to get kind of hard and not want to back off enough, especially between different suspension designs and also when you bottom the shocks out fully.
Mhm.
Ours is actually a micro ratcheting clutch
Interesting.
system, so it's always it'll get into where it needs to go as far and back out. And
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting how it works through its travel, so to
Oh,
speak,
okay.
for the cage system to
Yeah.
and keep the chain tight. The other thing is and this is between that micro ratcheting clutch. The other thing I noticed immediately, both testing the downhill version and the trail enduro version, was we have a lock called the hall lock,
Mhm.
which actually locks your mount bolt or your what we call the B
Mhm.
bolt
Mhm.
on the derailleur, that keeps the main parallelogram and main body of the derailleur from shifting. Because one of
Mhm.
the problems with some systems is that you've got the clutch trying to fight the chain and you've got the derailleur backing off, so they're doing this,
Okay, going opposite
so to
directions
speak.
kinda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. When you lock this down and you allow this to just track up and down, it makes it much quieter and much
Mhm.
more sound in the shifting.
Nice, nice. That's definitely make if I had all the money in the world, I'd be trying all the products.
Well, this is why I work for this company. I
Right,
have
right.
great products, so
Yeah, yeah.
it helps my little mountain bike and bicycle addiction quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you there. But definitely I can see how that works out. Well, now that you guys are getting into more parts, then it's like less things that you have to go elsewhere to get, right?
Exactly. Well, and the thing is this is something I'm happy to share with you when we're in Sedona next week as well. Kind of give
Oh,
you
cool.
more of a firsthand,
Yeah, yeah,
taste
yeah.
of this stuff too.
Yeah, so anybody that's going to Sedona
Yeah.
Mountain Bike Fest, they're gonna
Look
be
for
there.
TRP. I'll be
Yeah.
there. I'm an easy guy to find.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely swing by the TRP tent and say hi to Jerry
Yeah,
if you're in
absolutely.
town. You were telling me before the show, actually before we get into that, I wanted to ask you about bleeding them, the brakes that you guys have.
Yeah.
How's that process? Because I know for me, one of the things that I enjoy about Shimano is that they use the mineral oil
Hmm.
instead of the dot fluid. Just you have to be you don't have to be as careful with the mineral oil. So it's nice to hear that you guys use mineral oil as well.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree. I'm definitely on that same page.
So
So
did you?
the bleed process, besides as you mentioned, mineral oil, very easy to
Mm-hmm.
deal with. The bleed process actually is very, very similar to a Shimano.
Uh-huh.
Most of the time, when you put the brakes together, we have a kind of a fast connect system that
Uh-huh.
we use. And 98%, 99% of the time when we put brakes together, we don't even have to bleed them. It's pretty amazing
Oh,
how
wow.
easy they are. And that's a comment I get all the time from shops and from riders.
Yeah.
They're like, I got the brakes, I put them on, I cut them. It was so easy. Didn't even have to bleed them.
Yeah.
Or at worst, you know, if you do put something together or you have a little bit of air in the system, many, many times at races when I'm doing service support
Mm-hmm.
or in shops or trying to help someone, a lot of times you can get away with just doing a light lever type bleed where you're just doing, a hose or the little bleed cup
Mm-hmm.
that we have, which is, standard bleed cup like you see in a Park Tool kit or
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
in a Shimano. We have our own. It's blue, TRP blue. And, you use that, flick the lever, do the normal things that you would do in a bleed, and that will take care of it most of the time. If you need to do a full bleed, like if you say change the brake hose or you just need to flush the system, it is very similar to the Shimano where you're going to, of course, take the caliper off, put it down so you have the highest point up on
Mm-hmm.
it, put the, syringe in and bleed it up to the bleed cup up on the lever. So it's a
Yeah, yeah.
very simple, like I say, it's very, very similar to the Shimano. And the nice thing I find in the comment there, again, I get from lots and lots of shops and people who do try our stuff. And it's not only for TRP, but also for the Tectro stuff, believe it or not, is that the system is a fairly open system. So it's not like you're fighting it or pushing and pulling
Mm-hmm.
and, doing all these crazy things. It's straightforward. You
Yeah.
do it, it works, and you bolt it back together and it's solid,
Yeah.
That's another
Maybe.
complaint we get across the board is people put our stuff on and they're amazed how well it works,
Yeah.
and the lack of finickiness in most cases to,
Mm-hmm.
things of the world of temperature and things like
Yeah.
that. Because, sometimes, man, I hear horror stories from certain people about certain stuff of like, God, I got to bleed this thing once a week. It's, or the pads are always rubbing, or, I mean,
Yeah.
anything can have problems, right?
Right,
They're
right.
technical items, but we tend across the board to just have a very solid response of, man, your shit works great.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I ran Saint
not
or I ran
screaming all the time.
yeah, I ran SRAM for a while, and they just would always like, it seemed like they were always like they would heat up super fast, and then I think it would like glaze the pads, and then
Mhm.
you'd get like this like chipmunk or turkey kind of brake sound all the time. Like when I hear somebody on the trail, I'm like, oh, that's SRAM. I can hear it. It's just this like annoying noise, and that was the main reason that I got rid of them. It wasn't the braking power itself. It was actually just like, I mean, kind of what you're saying. It's just like
Yeah.
other problems with the brakes that you were like, okay, I just can't handle this, and so I wanted to ask again about the bleed though before it started shifting on it. Was you said you have this different mineral oil and it has a higher boiling point. Do you guys notice that it lasts longer before it needs to be bled, or
I s
kind of the same interval?
I really haven't done any research to see about the
Yeah,
longevity of it. I'm sure
yeah,
if I ask our main office that does the
yeah,
testing,
yeah, yeah,
they'd be able to tell me, but to be honest, I don't know. I'll just
yeah.
be very honest,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
What do you like recommend to people like when they ask how often they should do it?
It like anything, just like
Yeah.
your chain
Yeah.
or anything, it depends on how much you ride and in what kind of conditions.
Yeah.
And a real good gauge to know how much you should be bleeding your brakes is on each end, I always say, is judging it by how many sets of brake pads and rotors you're burning through.
Hmm.
I'd say at a minimum, I like to refresh my brake fluid at least once a year.
Yeah.
But if you ride a lot and you ride in really crappy conditions, you may need to do it more. A very simple way to know is to start to do if you want to do the quickest way is just to, actually open up the top and look into the bleed screw and see what the color the oil is.
Yeah.
Another way to do a quick way is to start to do a basic bleed with some fluid and just push some fluid up into the cup.
Yeah.
That's the color of your oil.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the only honest way to know. We don't have filters. We don't have meters. We don't have any other way other than visually. We don't even have a port like we would on a moto where you have, the window where you can see
you just see it. Yeah.
So the only honest way to do it is to actually do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
And, do it. And the funny thing is, more often than not, Robert, people are very surprised at how dirty their oil is even after a season or 6 months.
You just took the words out of my mouth.
Oh,
Every
man,
time I bleed my brakes.
Yeah, and then they'll be like, it's not only it looked like shit, Jerry.
Right.
It smelled like fuck. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Every
time I'm like, it's been a while. I should bleed my brakes. And I hooked that cup up, man, and it's just coming out like black tar. And I'm like, oh, wow. No wonder I was feeling like they weren't working right.
And you can imagine what could be in that, because you've got dirt, who knows what else, and it's not only not doing good things for the power of the brake, but it could potentially be breaking down, O-rings, quad rings, other pieces of the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not helping your cause either.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's definitely a good point. These make me feel like I should bleed my brakes before I go to Sedona. Definitely thinking that's probably going to happen. Going to need.
Yeah, well, it's just like, you don't think about it with your chain until it's just like making noise or it's shifting bad. Cable housings, those are another just inexpensive, forgotten thing. People are like, my shifting sucks, and they'll bring it to me at a race, and they'll be like, I put this TR12 on, it's not shifting very well. I'll be like, let me take a look at it, throw it in the stand, and I'll pull the cable. I'll be like, man, this thing shifts horrible. And I'll be like, let's loosen the cable. I'll loosen the cable and cycle the derailleur. I'm like, oh, the derailleur feels great. And I'll like try and pull on the cable and the housing. I'm like,
it's not moving.
And they're like, yeah, I actually like 2 weeks, it hasn't been working for a while. I'm like, yeah.
That's the problem.
Let me replace that derailleur and cable for you. We'll, and they're like, oh my God, it's like a new derailleur. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. But it's those maintenance things, just like in a vehicle. It's just, these are the things we as humans forget, because we're all the same in the effect of the last thing we all want to do in most cases is actually work on our bikes.
Yeah.
We want to ride them.
Right.
And especially with the living of today and friends and kids and work and, all these variables, a lot of us, don't have as much little cutouts of time to ride as we would like.
Yeah.
Definitely to ride as many bikes as we want. Right.
Right. Yeah. I definitely, can relate with that, not wanting to work on my bike thing. I'm always like 6 or 7 rides just dealing with something until I'm like finally like break down to actually fix it. But because it's just like you hear it, whatever it is, a creak or whatever, and you're like, oh man, I need to just, even when it's something simple. Like I was joking with my friend the other day, I was like, man, I've been riding with the nose of my seat down too far for at least a month, and it's like every time I get on the bike, I'm like, oh, I'll change it then when I get home. I don't feel like
you get on the bike wherever you're at, whether you start from home or you go somewhere.
Right.
And you don't realize it until you're 500 feet from where you left. And you're like, oh yeah, I was going to do that before I came.
Right.
But I forgot.
Yeah.
Always that way. And you're screw it. I'll just ride. Unless the bars are turning or the pedals falling off, you're like, I'll just listen to the brake pads rub, or I'll listen to the chain squeak, or headset's a little loose. Hopefully I won't ruin the bearings. Right. It's always something, because you're just, that's a rider.
Yeah.
I just want to ride.
Definitely me. Man, I've had this squeak on I have a tall boy, and I do not know where the hell it is coming from, and it is just baffling the shit out of me. I I am I was joking with my buddy yesterday when I was riding. I was like, I'm gonna sell this bike, and he's like, "Really, dude? You just got it?" And I was like, "Yeah, because it's like the only way I can get rid of this squeak right now."
Yeah.
I'm over it.
It's like, why'd you sell your new car? Yeah, it ran out of gas.
Right?
Whatever.
Sometimes those squeaks though, it's like, all right, first thing you do, take the seat off, right? Lube up everything and do with the seat post and the seat.
Seat post, bottom bracket.
Right. I did the bottom bracket too. I'm like,
into the cable and housing interface where it goes in the frame.
yeah, man.
And whether it's nowadays, whether it's shielded internal routing or
Yeah.
there's so many more variables now
Yeah.
than there was when we have external routing and easier ways of doing things that weren't so clean and neat.
And the thing that always gets you too is like sometimes like you'll swear up and down it's coming from the bottom bracket. For example, like my last bike, I had a squeak I was chasing for a while, and I like replaced the bottom bracket and everything. And then I don't know, it ended up being like something silly like the headset or something.
Right.
But you're like, why does it sound like for sure it's coming from my pedals?
Right. Or another common one that we've chased around for 20 plus years, ever since suspension forks came along, is not only headsets, but the steerer tubes in the crowns working loose or not having enough Loctite when they press the steer tube into the crown.
Oh, wow.
That interface, just a little bit of tolerance not being right causes just headaches.
Just drive you completely freaking bonkers.
Just drive you crazy, and it's a short drive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I have a pretty high tolerance for ignoring stuff, so I know when it's bothering me, it's over the top. My buddy yesterday was like, he's like, that bike is noisy, man. I can hear it over here. I'm like, yep. He's like, that must drive you crazy. I was like, I just turned my headphones up. Right. So that's good stuff. So you said you guys are going to Sedona. It's going to be your first time. Excited?
Yeah, super excited. Never gotten to go to Sedona. This year's been amazing, traveling with TRP, doing the job. I've gotten to go to some places I've never been, and some I've been to tons, like Sea Otter, but national championships was rad. Got to race and help a bunch of people there. North American Enduro Cup was way cool. Got to go to Rampage for the first time this year.
Yeah, buddy asked me if I wanted to go, and I had
something crazy cool.
Yeah, I heard it's super fun.
Crazy cool. And then Sedona, never been to it, but I've heard just nothing but good things, including from you. And I think
so. You've never been to Sedona at all, or just not the festival?
No, both.
Yeah.
So it's like bonus.
Yeah,
living the dream.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Do you have any trails in particular that you're looking forward to riding, or are you just gonna be there all work, no play? Or
no, it's like whatever I can fit in and not in trouble. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Not a job to do, but definitely want to do some of that job on the trails and let some people try some of our stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a huge part.
Are you guys like working with another, like one of the bikes that are demo in there and like having your brakes on that? Or
I know we do have some companies that have bikes have brakes that are on their bikes. So definitely be supporting them. I don't have a list in front of me right now.
Yeah, no worries.
And then, I'll be there, of course.
Yeah.
And if someone needs try something, I have my stuff as well. So
cool.
But I think the big thing is just kind of taking it all in and making, the thing I like the most about part of my job of going to events is it's like meeting you at Sea Otter. I'm meeting new friends, and that's more people to ride with.
Yeah.
Meet here with and whatever, it's the community of cycling is the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah, it's super rad. I mean, it's definitely obviously we're both biased. So
I'm biased.
I always like when I have friends that aren't into riding, I'm like, dude, you don't know what you're missing, man. Like this is like it's really fun, and it has a lot to do with the people,
it is the riding, but it's honestly the people that make it. And so it's this killer little circle of life, that we have.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of new people now, because of COVID too. So
which is
interesting
great.
to see kind of that surge of new riders and stuff like that. And um, for me, I've been riding for so long that it's hard for me to imagine like not being a rider, and being like 40 years old and being like, you know what, I'm gonna try riding mountain bikes, like
But
it,
that's the great thing is it's accessible, just like,
yeah,
getting into snowboarding or something. It's
yeah,
you can do it at any
yeah,
age, really,
yeah,
and I it's to me, it's like being a little kid all the time. I
yeah,
mean, I'm I built a new bike before Sea Otter. I'm building a new bike right now. I'm like, every time I'm like waiting for
yeah,
parts. I'm like a little kid at Christmas.
yeah,
Where do you get
yeah,
that kind of
super.
excitement? I mean, I'm 55 going on 13 at best. Come on. It's just
That's
the
super rad.
coolest.
So what was I gonna say? Anyways, I've been keeping an eye on the comments while we're chatting, and a handful of people have mentioned your Schwinn homegrown banner in the background.
Oh, yeah, that was from my days of riding for Schwinn. Um, I've still got my 15-inch Schwinn slalom bike sitting here. I've got an old Schwinn. What is it? Oh, it's an old homegrown um, full suspension URT from '95. So I rode
So
for
you were
Schwinn.
telling me right before we went live that you knew Jeff Lenoski, and you had that was one of the biker bars that you had listened to before coming on
Yeah,
the show. So
so I
did you
met
know him
you.
from Schwinn?
What's that?
So did you know him from Schwinn? Is that how you guys
Yeah,
knew each other?
yeah. So actually, like I was telling you, I knew Jeff from Schwinn. We rode for them at the same time in the '90s. Obviously Jeff's quite a bit better known rider than I am, but
Uh-huh.
just good people, and it was just a great company to ride for.
Uh-huh.
Because they were really pushing the limits of poking at people at that time. Because
Hmm.
Schwinn was still their own thing, even though it
Yeah.
wasn't by the family anymore at that point. But
Yeah.
it
Who
was
would
it was
would
great.
you say there's a bike company out there like that now?
There's always your upstarts,
Yeah.
right? That have good soul. You
Yeah.
know, um, so that's something that's cool about the industry is there's always
Yeah.
little things popping up
Yeah.
everywhere, and
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to get help by quite a few companies that were small and some that are big.
Yeah.
Even today, I mean, one of my current people that helped me is a fairly good sized company, and one that helps me is a company that's here in Boise. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So does TRP, you just work out of home, or do they have an office up there in Boise or something?
I have a home office that I work from. Being
Oh,
that
that's cool.
at the current time, I am their sole outside sales, technical, and event support person, part of
Awesome.
a team of people
Yeah.
that we've built here in the States. And it's something that we're looking at expanding so we can reach more dealers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but so I base out of Boise,
Mm-hmm.
and I drive one of their Sprinter vans,
Uh-huh.
and I travel across the Western United States to
Right
visit
on.
dealers. But, part of my time is working from home,
Yeah.
emails, phone calls,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the best part of my job is going, out into the field and going to the shops, seeing what's
Yeah.
going on. Kind of a big part of how we've grown things is being out in the field and just doing things person to person, the
Mm-hmm.
old-fashioned way. It's
Yeah.
weird when I go into a shop and I hand them my bike or I hand them a component and they're like, "What?
Yeah.
You're here? You want us
Yeah.
to try some stuff?" I'm like, "Man,
Yeah.
that's old school, man." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's how that just seems to be a unique way that we're doing it that other people aren't quite
That's good
doing in the
though.
same manner."
I feel like that, I don't know, I feel like that's a level of customer service that makes you stand out, you know?
It does. It is, and
Yeah.
it's more fun.
Yeah.
How cool is it when you get to actually touch the stuff and check it out? And especially the last couple of years, it's been very interesting with the growth in interest for our products
Mhm.
to go into places and people actually be like, dude, I've been wanting to see that. I've never got to
Yeah.
touch one of those brakes or those drive trains or whatever.
Yeah.
You're here.
Yeah.
Sweet. That it seems to be making all the difference for us,
Yeah, I mean, everybody's not as fortunate. I mean, I'm fortunate that where I live, I'm close to where Sea Otter is, so it's like easy to go to that. There's lots of
Right.
people that work in lots of shops and whatnot that they don't have access to something like that, and or it just doesn't make any sense for them to spend that much money to go drive up to Sea Otter to see stuff, or to fly or whatever.
I feel it's important that we reach out to people in that way. It's just a connection that you make that you can't make by calling someone.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, it's been a challenge, the past 18 months or so with us. We've had to be very careful and very respectful of people and whatever's going on in each individual community. But at the end of the day, the response we get is just like at Sea Otter. People are just like stoked to see us, or any event we go to, they're like, dude, we want to, we hear so much. What's up? So at sometimes I do feel like the Shell answer man, because people have a lot of questions, but that's okay. That's a great, enjoyable part of my job.
Have you guys been having like a lot of supply chain issues or anything like that? I mean, everybody has, but
we've been very lucky to do better than most, I feel. One of the issues, of course, has been raw materials, things of that nature. But I think a big thing that we have had in our favor is that we are our own manufacturer.
Okay.
We're not having to rely on other people's factories and timelines and dealing with other people being in our order.
Yeah.
I feel bad for some manufacturers of bicycles for even, for argument's sake, where they're like, yeah, it's brand X and brand X and brand X, but they're all made at this factory. And the one that has the most orders, they're getting done first. They get priority. So we've managed to do very well. We've worked very hard to get that stuff, and the team in Taiwan, as well as the other offices, have really struggled in some ways to make sure that things were getting done. But overall, I think we've done a great job, and people are pretty stoked.
Yeah. I mean, and everything, like, I'm not trying to like point any particular finger, like, you guys don't have the, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's struggling.
Everybody doesn't have
it's like it's just I think that was like one of the main reasons I mentioned that your stuff was interchangeable earlier is just because like everybody's having so much trouble. Like I think when we had the conversation at Sea Otter, I actually need another brake line. I didn't know that I could use your stuff, and I was like, oh, that's really good to know.
Right. Yeah. We've been lucky, especially this year. The factories have done an extremely great job making sure that we're getting shipments usually every month of different products to refill what we need. And them working hard, as well as our guys in the office doing customer service, as well as the guy who does all our ordering for us, making sure that he's working with our people overseas to get the stuff. Just everyone's done a tremendous job. I mean, high to low in the company. And it's cool because it's kind of, as you may or may not have noticed when you were at Sea Otter, that was we're not a huge group here in the US, but we're quite a unique and motley crew. That kind of all gels together, and we all have our unique thing that is what we do for the company and our personalities, and they are very good about allowing us to be ourselves, in our jobs, which translates to making people feel a lot more comfortable than us being, very corporate per se. I mean, obviously I'm very corporate.
Those of you guys that are listening, he has very long hair. He definitely doesn't look like a corporate guy in a suit.
Got my suit, all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I saw you were drinking the Lagunitas little something. That's a good one.
I saw you have the Lagunitas bottle in the background. So
yeah, I probably have one. I don't. Oh yes, what's that? Hop Stupid behind me there.
Yeah, it's a Hop Stupid.
Yeah, they make some good beers, man.
Really,
you guys
good.
got some good ones up there in Boise too, huh?
We do.
Yeah.
We're a little behind the times on things, but that's actually good.
Yeah. How's the riding scene up there?
The riding scene in Boise is amazing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we have some of the gnarliest terrain I've ever seen, but the community is fantastic.
Yeah.
The amount of different kind of riding you can do is amazing.
Yeah.
And just, it's a good group of people, man.
Yeah.
Just really good.
I went up and rode Sun Valley, I think it was last year, up in that area, and it was super fun. It was really fun trails up there. Definitely I remember the dirt was really interesting to me because it didn't look like it would be as supportive as it was.
Right.
Like I was really kind of shocked, like I just had a really good time riding up there. So I haven't ridden in the Boise area though.
Boise area is good. We're a little more deserty.
Yeah.
And say up in Sun Valley. But I mean, an hour from here, it totally changes into the trees, and there's tree line above us. But it's killer. I mean, we have 2 different bike parks here, BMX tracks, tons of road riding, foothills. I mean, it's very, very diverse.
The weather's kind of mild too. I mean, you guys will get a little snow, but not like a ton.
Little snow, but it's not like we're living in Wyoming or some crazy.
Yeah.
The winters are not that bad here.
Yeah.
Maybe a little 3.0 tire sometimes during the year, but
other than that, so you guys can still ride all year then?
Pretty much all year. The only time that when it snows and freezes, we're usually pretty good. It's typically the early spring when the trails in the lower foothills are just too wet and too much mud.
Yeah.
But we have a very unique thing here where some areas are very mud and dirt, some are more gravel and sandstone. So those trails tend to be more rideable in the winter because they drain better.
Yeah.
Or you typically, when there's snow on the ground or ice, then you go out and ride before it thaws.
Yeah.
So
you said you were building a new bike. What are you building?
I can't say at the moment.
Oh, nice. Well, that's fun. I guess you said you're bringing it to Sedona, so I guess we'll see it there, huh? Yeah, right on, dude. That's cool. That's super cool. What products are you most excited about from TRP?
A lot of the stuff for next year that I can't talk about that I've seen and played with, which is really cool. I mean, I think we're going to open some people's eyes high and low with the stuff we have coming. Just to there again, back to our original start where, we're doing some stuff that we hope will actually make people realize that we are a legitimate other choice. Not only for the way it works, but another huge part is, like we talked about earlier, just our customer service end. One of the unique things is the guys who are answering the phones in our office, which is in Ogden, Utah, which there again has some great writing and stuff. The guys who work in the office ride. And are passionate about this stuff. That's something that's huge in the culture of the people that my boss hires is we want people who use our stuff to work for us. It's the only way that we can know whether it works or not. And, I definitely use that as an excuse to ride when I can myself.
100%.
And race.
So you're still racing?
Yeah, I still love to race. I'm, not as fast as I once was being 55, but racing that's where you get the real test. Man and machine, and just it's fun. And I think it really adds a level of confidence with a lot of especially the riders and people that use our product to know that, hey, that guy that's working on your bike or helping you get this product, he actually rides it.
Yeah.
He uses it competition wise.
Yeah.
So, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's did you race when you were at Sea Otter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. How'd you do?
Not bad. Dual slalom, third.
Yeah.
Got on the podium.
Right on, dude.
Good times.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was great, camaraderie of the people you race with is awesome. But
yeah,
I think it's that thing where when people know that someone is using the stuff and works for the company, that kind of ties the whole thing together. And they know you're having fun. And that's kind of the bottom line of why we all do this is our outlet.
Yeah. What kind of warranty is on, like, comes with the brakes? Like, I've never had to warranty anything like that, but I would imagine that, sometimes things come up or something like that.
No, sometimes things do come up, of course. So a big thing with us is making sure that we take care of people when they have issues. So a lot of times, I don't think I've had to do very many warranties over the years I've worked for these guys. But generally, we try to make sure the customer is taken care of. And we also want to make sure we're educating them on what may or may not happen with the product. Because sometimes it's just a setup thing. Sometimes it's a legitimate, hey, we messed up with this, and that's the bigger thing is if something doesn't work right for someone and it was our fault, we just go ahead and take care of it. That's a huge thing, with reason. It's always on a case-by-case basis because you just never know. I've had, people come to me and something's been, so old and so beat up that I'm like, how can I warranty something that isn't a warranty issue?
Yeah. You used it for 10 years, dude. That's old.
Or someone, they'll be like, hey, my brake doesn't work. And I'll be like, we don't have any brake pads left. Onto the metal. I'm like, that's not a warranty.
Yeah.
But we tend to be very, very good about it, but within reason.
So you said you guys make your own pads as well.
Yes.
What goes into that? I know there's different companies are spouting over, what their compound is and it's better or worse, or you know what I mean? Like,
there's always lots to go on. So over the years, we originally only had a couple of pad compounds for our brakes. And when we started to develop the DHR Evo stuff, we actually found that we could make a really good resin, high performance resin brake pad. And I know in a lot of cases that you think, oh, it's a resin brake pad. That's low end. But they were able to make stuff that would allow us to get an easier bed-in process for the brake, have quite a bit more bite with less finger pressure at the lever, and the pad has a fairly good wear life as well. I mean, not as good as they are sintered semi-metallic, and not as good as our metallic, because there's always a trade-off with brake pads, no matter who's the manufacturer and what they're doing between bite and longevity. Because to get more bite, the pad has to be softer. So it transfers more material.
When people say organic, they're talking about resin then, right?
Yeah, in most cases, yes.
Yeah.
So
I tend, go ahead.
No, you.
I tend to use resin just because I like that they don't typically get as loud. So like I'm willing to give up a little bit of the bite, so to speak, but
so this is the unique thing, and that's always been the contention of resin pads, is most people feel that they're giving up bite. Our resin, the blue pad, which comes stock now in all the 4 piston brakes, it actually has more bite than our red, which is our semi-metallic, or our gold, which is our full metallic. And it has to do more so that I feel personally that the pad is not as hard. So it likes to mate to the rotor and leave material much, much easier
Oh,
than
that makes
a
sense.
harder pad that does not. Harder pad wants to do this. It wants to skitter more across the rotor surface. Once you, of course, any pad, once you get embedded in, then they have mating properties.
Right.
And that goes a long way. It's a weird thing. We started doing the resin pad about 2 years ago with the DHR, and from there, that's what I run in all my bikes.
Yeah.
Only time I don't run a one of our resin pad is maybe deep in winter, and I know I'm going to ride in a ton of just wet stuff that's just going to eat the pad up, and I'm going to be out in the field for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever. Then I would opt for something that has maybe a little more wear life if I don't have a chance to change them. But it's really hard because I guarantee you, once you ride that pad and how well it beds in and how well it works, you'll just, what the heck?
Yeah, I really like the fact that you said that the pads are colored different. Like
They are.
blue.
We use a different backing color to the pad just to identify.
Yeah, no, I like
one
that.
they are. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's super simple because it's like
Right.
always like some people are like, I don't know, even with me until I bought enough of them that I finally was able to remember, which is a lot. It's like, okay, what one do I use? And I have to find the old package or look on. Hopefully, it's stamped on the pad somewhere. I'm like, otherwise, I'm like, crap, man, I really like those pads. I don't remember which one I bought.
We're on the KISS system.
Yeah,
keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, 100%.
So another, the pads are done that way as well. A little while back, I think it was a year or so ago, with our adapters, we used to have a forged adapter for TRP. We went to a machined adapter about a year or so ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it allowed us to have much better tolerances in the adapters. So they're more square and plumb, and they look nicer, and the finish is nicer. But as well, we moved to a system that made it much easier for people to use our adapters with said fork or rear end combination. In the effect, there's a lot of companies that you look at the adapter and they're like, oh, this is for 203 front, or this is for 180 rear. And you're like, what's that really mean?
Yeah.
So we boiled it down to this. If you have a 160 post mount and you need to put a 180, it's a plus 20.
Yeah.
Right? You need to go 20 millimeter more.
Right.
Millimeter bigger space from
that's awesome.
native. So all of our call outs for our post mounts are all that way to make it simple. PM20, PM23, PM40, all the way up to a PM43. We actually make a post mount 43, so you can go from 180 to 223.
Oh, wow.
Which that's what I'm going to do on the new bike. I think I'm going to do 223 front, 203 rear.
Really?
It's a long travel enduro.
Yeah.
Machine.
Do they weigh much more? The 223s?
They weigh a little more, but I mean,
who cares?
you'd never notice.
Yeah.
And
then it's the same brake. It's like the brake's not any different. So
no, you just have a lot more material that's out there. I think I always let people ask me, well, how much more does that weigh? And I'm like, you know what? If it matters that much that you need to count grams, you probably don't need these brakes.
Right.
Like you're a bigger guy. I'm a smaller guy, but I just want the most I can have. That's usable, though.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is a lot of people will be like, I want the most powerful brake. Well, that's like saying I want the biggest engine in my vehicle, but I don't put the transmission to get the power to the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. That's useless. So a big part of something that we've always had as a hallmark the whole time I've worked with these guys, especially as we've developed through the 4-piston brakes, is we have a fantastic mix of power, but feel at the lever. So you
Yeah.
can really get that point of before lockup, or where you, instead of it feeling so, say, digital,
Mm-hmm.
it has more of that feel like you were reaching down to the rotor and actually putting your hand on it
Right.
to
Right.
get that feel.
So you feel like you have it's a softer pull on the TRP, not
Yeah,
so on and off is what you're saying.
yeah, less on and off. It's when you
Like
get
everybody
into
knows Shimano's on and off. Like that's
Mono's very on and off.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't like to
Yeah.
pinpoint a
No,
brand.
no, I understand, but I mean,
Um,
you're in the industry. You don't have to say the name. I can.
yeah, it's true. You ask anyone, and
Yeah,
I talk to people all the time. They're like, "Tell me what's different. What am
yeah,
I going to feel different in your brake if I go to it?"
yeah.
That's a big hallmark that I tell people. This is going to have a much better feel at your finger or fingers, depending on how you
Mhm,
like to brake, to get the power pinpointed to where you need it. So you're
mhm,
not locking it up. So you're
mhm,
not doing the classic oh shit brake.
mhm,
And that level of confidence really allows you to have more playfulness, or
mhm,
more instantaneous grab at the last minute, or do stoppies, or do a directional change with the brake confidently.
mhm, mhm.
It's huge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, would you say you're like? I mean, SRAM's like most people say they like SRAM because of the modulation. You say you're kind of in the middle there somewhere,
Yeah,
or
that's the easiest way I put it to people is we kind of combine the
Mhm.
best of all these things into one thing.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
easiest way to explain it.
yeah.
And that's the feedback I get from people who try them. They're like,
Mm,
"You're right." It's once I tried it, I was like, "Wow, I could actually figure out where I needed to brake and time it properly," which you brought up earlier.
mhm.
Knowing where you can brake, especially on a trail you've known for a
Right,
while. You go ride that
right.
familiar, when we test stuff, you go a lot of times on a familiar trail, there's
Yeah,
marks and you know how to gauge what's going on.
yeah,
That's where people really start to pull this all together,
yeah.
is they ride that familiar trail and they're like, dude, all of a sudden I wasn't thinking about it.
Mhm.
I was making stuff happen and it was just like natural.
Yeah,
That's when you know stuff's working properly.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think that's like key there. I mean, when you're testing something out or you just bought something as a consumer, go to your trail that you ride all the time
No,
because
it's
you're going to know right away, like, is that better or not? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. You have to, anytime you're testing something, you've got to have a benchmark. If you
yeah,
don't have a benchmark laid out, you have no way of knowing if your information is proper.
yeah.
Very simply put.
Yeah. People always, like, you go to these events and stuff like that, like Sedona, for example. I mean, to me, it's like I could go ride almost any bike there and I'm going to be like, this bike's great. But like, I don't know how that is actually like until I was able to like ride that bike on my home trail that I'm like trying to freaking go as fast as I can on every week, and
Yeah.
until I get that bike there, I'm not going to be able to like give a proper like like a description of what's going on. You know what I
No,
mean?
no. Well, it's totally true. You can't trust it.
Yeah.
Another perfect example is I built a brand new bike to race the Otter. And literally every run I was going faster because I was figuring the bike out and trusting
Yeah.
it more. So you've got to have that familiar place and that benchmark to know whether things are better or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
common thing in testing that we run into is sometimes we would put people on stuff and they would be like, you know, this is more for suspension, but we'd put someone on a shock and they'd be like, oh, it doesn't feel good. And I twist a couple knobs and go back out and be like, okay, how's that? Yeah, it still doesn't feel good. I twist the knobs back to where he started and
Yeah.
go ride that. Dude, feels better. There's a lot of subjectiveness.
Yeah.
Humans
Yeah.
can be very subjective and data can be very all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having the baseline and being familiar with stuff, gives you more honest data.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So you said you're going to have some stuff at Sedona that people will be able to demo or somehow, or?
Yeah, I'll have my bikes there.
Okay.
So, and then I've got,
like your,
I'll also figure out who has our brakes on their bikes, so I can let people know, hey, this manufacturer has our stuff.
Okay,
That's another outlet for us.
Gotcha. That makes sense. What brake? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me take a step back there. What kind of maintenance should people be doing? I mean, is there like any other maintenance that you should do to your brakes other than just bleeding them?
I mean, cleaning them always is helpful, you know. Something I like to do every so often is lubricate the bushing and pivot area where the main rod goes through on the brakes, because they can get dry, especially if you're cleaning your bike a lot. On the actual lever assembly, because that's a very exposed portion where dirt always wants to go in there. The plunger assembly from the outside, because there's a little pivot in there that connects to the lever assembly that goes into the plunger. Another one I like to do too, that's always a good idea, is to do, and we have a great thing on the TRP Cycling website of doing basic exercises and maintenance and stuff for people. So that's another great resource. And another big one is doing what we call a piston exercise. So that's actually where you're going to take the pads out of the caliper. You're going to actually take our normal bleed block, which is to do the whole 4 pistons, right? And you're going to turn that bleed block sideways and do 2 pistons at a side. And basically you're going to want to pop either the rear or the front 2 pistons out a ways, not too far, because pop them out too far and they're going to drip oil everywhere. But you take the pistons out a few millimeters and clean them with alcohol, and then lube them with mineral oil and push them back in and push them out and push them in a few times. And what that does is it cleans out that tight tolerance area where the pistons are going in and out for pushing on your brake pads. Takes dirt and grime out of those quad ring area and lubricates that, because sometimes if any dirt gets in there, it can cause the pistons to hang up, causes rubs, or worse yet, you draw dirt and crap that contaminates your oil back into the system. So those are probably the 2 most that I tend to do.
What do you use to push the pistons back in? I had a set of brakes once, I think, that had like ceramic pistons or something like that, and I'm cracking them with because I used to always use just a screwdriver, and I just turn it in there like a big screwdriver, and I just turn the flathead like sideways, push them back out, you know. And one time I broke a
what I suggest is when I'm doing the piston exercises on my brakes, I will go ahead and pull the turned bleed block out, because you're doing 2 at a time, so they advance individually, or in pairs, excuse me. You can push those back by hand.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, you just I usually reach up under the caliper and just push it back in. So typically you can do it by hand. If you feel you can't do it by hand, what I suggest is to go ahead and try and wiggle the bleed block back in. Usually they have an upper tab that you can push in there and start to pry, but I typically would use something, of a plastic material, not metal like a screwdriver.
I learned my lesson the hard way. But it's funny, I mean, like even Park's tool, like I think they have a tool that's for like pushing apart. But I think that's meant to be in between the pads, huh?
It's meant to be in between the pads, exactly. Like I say, most of the time, especially in our 2.3 caliper, because it sits more offset than a standard caliper, it's a little wider in that area, you can usually get your fingers in there and just push back on the pistons.
I still use the screwdriver, but I use an old set of pads now, so I'm like
old set of pads. I mean, I guess at worst, if you had to kind of ghetto-fy it, at least I would put a t-shirt or a towel down in there, so at least it's metal on metal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Or metal on
Yeah.
ceramic, depending on what your brake situation is, or metal on
Yeah.
in certain
That
pistons.
was an expensive mistake to learn. So
It can be. But the other one I always tell people to be careful of is watch the pistons as they advance. Because like I say, you don't want them going out too far.
yeah.
Because you could push those pistons out far enough where they'll just pop out and oils
Oh
it.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never done that, but I'm sure I'm always working on my bike when I'm drinking beer. So I wouldn't put it past me that it happens.
It's inevitable.
Right.
It's either that or you're in race mode, you're in a hurry, or like I'm trying to get my bike ready for a ride and the pistons are sticking. And so I mean, there's many ways.
Yeah. Definitely. Shoot. So we talked about the pads. We talked about the different models of brakes. So if somebody has like a kind of, what would be the brake that you would recommend for most people? Like they're just like, hey, I want to get new brakes. I got, these whatever SRAMs that came on my bike and they're not that good, and I want to try your product. Which direction would you point them?
It really depends on what that customer needs as far as brakes, because like you had said earlier, a bigger guy to a smaller guy has a lot of different needs compared to, say, an e-bike to say a travel bike.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it's a lighter bike and lighter rider, you could use a less powerful brake in most cases when we're talking ultimate power, to stop the bike.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. My dirt jumper, I run the Slate Evo, our base model 2.3 thick rotor brake. It's a smaller bike. It's lighter. I'm not per se trail riding it where I need the most stopping power.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't be putting a 203 on my dirt jump.
Right. 180 rotors on the dirt jump bike, right?
Right.
And that's even pushing it, right?
Yeah.
But you go up to, say, my dual slalom bike, and because it's a race bike, I run the top of the line brake because it's a race bike, and I want to have the most amount of brake I can have to stop. Same with the downhill bike.
Yeah.
When you want the very most, you go for the high end. I would say in most cases, most people will probably fall somewhere in the Slate Evo to the Trail Evo or Quad Diem. Those three middle line brakes are our most popular sellers, hands down, next to the original Slate T4. The Slate T4 comes in as a standard 1.8 rotor brake, where that customer's like, hey, I'm either a slightly bigger guy or I just want more than a 2-piston brake, but I do want to shave a little bit of weight. I'm a little bit lighter guy. It's going on a hardtail.
Yeah.
What do you got that's kind of in between?
Yeah.
That's the Slate T4 standard. That is our best-selling brake that we make, hands down. Number two, just because of its price, it's $119 per line. And it works with standard rotors. It's simple. It looks good. It works.
Is that 4-piston? It's a 2-piston.
It's all 4-piston. Everything in our line currently, Robert, is 4-piston.
Okay.
It just seems like with the bigger wheels and the way things are going these days, you need a little bit more than a 2-piston.
Yeah.
In reality, it just is the fact. As our wheels have grown and the geometries have gotten better and just things are easier to ride at more capable speeds, you need a little more brake. And it's nice having that. The Slate T4 is kind of that super great balance between almost a light cross country brake, but still having the 4-piston power, and good looks on top of it.
Yeah, definitely. My lady's bike, I have some TRPs on there. I don't remember which model they are though. But just recently, I'm gonna ask you this, see what you tell me to do. There was something that was loosening up, and I think it was like, I don't know what it was. It was like the brake lever, maybe it was the little knob that adjusts the bite point, like where the lever goes in and
the
out.
lever reach.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, it was
behind the lever, correct?
Yeah, for whatever reason, it was getting loose.
Okay.
And it kept loosening up. So I put some Loctite on it.
Yep.
And when I did that, though, I got it on the plunger. And I was like, not even thinking about it. We were leaving for a ride. And I was like, whatever. And then now the brake sticks. So what should I do? Should I just take the whole thing apart, or?
Shoot me a picture of it. I want to see where that material might have gotten. Because typically, typically,
I forgot that I did that.
You're actually the first person that's asked me about that exact question.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what to tell you, to be honest.
It was 100% my fault. It was one of those things where it was like, I don't know why I didn't take the 2 seconds to walk over to my wall of tools and spray some alcohol on it and just wipe it off. Then it was just like in my head, I was like, it's no big deal, and like we just left to go ride. I think we were in a hurry to go. And then like the next day she's like, man, my brake's like sticking. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, we can figure that out. Like I say, though, I've never, so this, to back up just a little.
Yeah.
There is some cases that I've ran into in the field where, yes, either the customer has turned the adjuster so many times that he's worn off the little layer of blue Loctite to the point where the reach adjust moves.
Yeah.
And typically, yes, what I will do is I will pull the knob assembly off and I'll rotate the thread out to bring the lever as close as I can to get the threads away from the plunger into the lever as far as I can go, right? And then I'll rotate it back in, because then it drags it back in and I let it dry.
Yeah. And
then there's enough material in there to keep the threads from, because we're just basically trying to seize the threads.
Yeah, I seized the wrong part.
Correct term. We're trying to cause more interference in the threads.
Right. I did wrong interference.
Never gotten to the point where I've gotten it into the plunger to where it's hanging. So
like I said, leave it to me, man. I definitely I can screw some shit up.
No, we're up to the challenge. We can figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've never ran into that. So yeah.
All right. Believe me, that was a first for me, man. I've been working on bikes for a long time, but I don't know why. Like,
no, you know what? I in my job, I run into stuff like this. It's just a fact that I see a lot of stuff. I've screwed enough stuff up myself, right? That's usually how you learn, like in this case. But in this case, I have to be honest and just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we'll work on it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm trying to be a very honest person,
Yeah. And that's good though. It's like, I mean, that's all the answer that some people need to hear sometimes, is like, all right, well, but we can figure it out. We can work together.
No, we'll figure it out. I mean, there's a way to, there's more ways to do stuff than you could imagine. But that's one of the cool things is if I don't know, then you and I together, or, whoever I'm working with, we figure it out and we take care of it and we both know. And then that's something that usually I can ask one of the other people on our team, have you ran into this? And they'll say yes. And they'll have a solution. Or they'll say no. And then I and the person I'm working with, we figure it out. And then we share that back to our team. Yeah. So that's another huge thing that we have going on, is there's a lot of transfer of information amongst all of us. So we all can kind of know what's going on. Because as much as we would like to say we know everything and we've ran into every situation and problem, the world doesn't work like that, man. In reality, weird shit happens and you have to figure around it.
I might be the only dumb gorilla with a bottle of Loctite dumping it on the plunger. So
I don't think you are.
Somebody else has done it too. That makes me feel better.
No, someone else has probably done it, and they probably did it with a higher Loctite than or whatever you have, whatever number you put on that thing.
Yeah, no, I was just using the blue stuff, but I had the right idea, but the wrong follow through. So
You know what? And I'll be honest, over the years, I've gotten a little overzealous with the Loctite in certain situations. So
sometimes
don't
that
feel
stuff
too
just
bad.
comes out super fast though, too. You go to squeeze it because the bottle like is kind of empty, and then next thing you know,
Right.
you're like, oh, I got all of it now.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm going to put a little dab on this bolt. And you're like, oh God, it's
Right
covered. What do I
now, it's
do?
everywhere. Yeah, I'm sure that's probably how it
Yeah,
went
don't feel
down.
too bad.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's see here. What else was I going to ask you? Now I'm drawing a blank right now. So, anyway, so what what are you looking forward to doing at Sea Otter?
So we're going to be back at Sea Otter next April, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We plan on doing quite a few events next year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sea Otter's on the list. We'll have good support at quite a few of the big mountain enduro events.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we'll do some of, if they come around, the more traditional events.
Mm-hmm.
There is no inner bike or anything like that really anymore,
Yeah.
per se. A big part of doing stuff is going out to events and just meeting people and making sure we're supporting our consumers, our athletes, people who are interested in the product.
Yeah.
Because now more than ever before, there's more people using the TRP products.
Yeah.
So we're updating and upgrading our support network. That's a huge thing that we're working on in 2022 beyond what we already currently have, which is working fairly well for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool because a big part of my job is to let people know, hey, you can call me if you have a problem or a question or an issue. You can call our office during the week. There's people live answering the phones that
Mm-hmm.
know the product and write it, which there again, back to that old school thing. It's weird. You call somewhere and need some help and someone answers the phone.
Right.
What a concept.
Right. It's always nice when that happens.
So that's a big focus for us is always making sure that we're attainable and easily approachable for people
Yeah.
to get their stuff taken care of.
You guys have good looking products too, man. I remember the first product that I saw was you guys had some rotors, and if I remember correctly, they were like kind of have like a black color, like inset into some of the like the I don't know how you would say like the indentations of the rotor.
Yes,
And
yes. So those were our series of rotors that had the black cleaning grooves
yeah,
in the
yeah,
brake,
yeah, and
right?
that thing, those look so sharp, man.
Right. So
You
that
still
was
make those?
we still make those.
Oh,
Absolutely.
right on.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one rotor I forgot that we did have
Yeah,
when you asked about rotors earlier.
yeah,
That's always been a really popular one for us, just because they look cool and we
yeah. They look
designed
super cool.
it to shed mud and do stuff. So um, along that line, funny you should ask, we do have available on our website now, especially specifically primarily made for the DHR Evo. I haven't tried to see if they fit some of the other Evo style calipers like the Trail and the other ones, but we do make a mud cover for the DHR Evos
Oh,
that
interesting.
goes into, yeah, it covers over the opening of the top of the caliper to keep mud from going in to the brake. And they were used on World Cup riders' bikes in muddy conditions. So we do actually have those available now on our website
Oh, that's
for the
interesting.
DHR Evo.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would have never really thought about that,
Well,
but
it's something that there again harkens back to another brake that we've had in the lineup for quite a while that I've used. There's a brake that we have called the Spike, which is a mechanical disc brake that I've used primarily on my fat bikes in the winter.
mhm.
And it was designed with a cover over the caliper portion to keep snow and mud out. So the
Yeah.
pads and everything don't get frozen. It's the only brake that I could really run consistently when it was below 0 out here.
Interesting.
Yeah, the non-mechanical, fluid brake systems would work, but they get very sluggish when it gets cold. So they don't like to return the lever, and they feel,
Yeah.
lack of a better term. So the Spike is a great mechanical brake that has separate pad adjustment and everything. It has great power, especially with the Spike lever. But it originally came with a removable cover. And
Interesting.
that's kind of where, we came up with that.
I've never really considered like dirt or mud being in my brakes and like whether that mattered other than it just like getting noisy, Should people hose off their brakes? Is it bad to use a hose on them? Like,
I don't think it's bad to use a hose on them. I think more so a lot of people make the mistake of sometimes getting a little too zealous with cleaning products on their drivetrain, like degreaser and stuff, and then not hosing it off into the brakes. But a lot of times they'll hose it off and then want to use an high pressure air to blow off the cassette, and they'll blow contaminants
that makes
across
sense.
the hub into the brake mechanism.
Yeah.
And so one, it contaminates the rotor, which the rotor isn't the worst part. It doesn't help, but at least the rotor is somewhat hard.
Yeah.
The pads, the softer the pad, the more porous the pad is. So the more that it can ingest gunk.
Yeah.
That's where the contaminants could get into that pad, and you would have to either really deglaze the pad, or if it's gotten enough material down bedded into the pad, replace the pad.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like my experience in life has been if you get something on your pads, every like YouTube video that I've watched of, you can put it on sandpaper and use alcohol and rub it in this figure 8 circle pattern or whatever. It's like, it never works, man. Just go buy new.
Well, here's another little tech tip.
All right.
And I learned this from an old friend of mine. And I try and teach this to everyone about brake pads. Very simple. A lot of people make that common thing of, I want to deglaze my pad. It was contaminated. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it had some manufacturing stuff on it because it was almost new, right? But it's making noise,
right?
And so they'll take the pad, and a couple things I see they do wrong. One, they'll take the pad and put sandpaper in their hand and try and deglaze it, and that's not a flat surface, so you're not keeping that pad plumb and square.
Right.
Number two, most of the time people are using sandpaper, and if they're smart, they're doing it in that figure 8, which helps keep that flat. But when you're doing that, you're actually heating the pad up against the sandpaper and driving the contaminants right back into the pad. So the thing to use is actually drywall screen. You can get it at Fred Meyer, Kroger, your hardware store, Home Depot, whatever. But what you want to use is drywall screen, because what it allows things to do, one, it's fairly high grit. So it makes quick work of getting that pad flat. But number two, as you are deglazing that pad, you're dropping all that material through the screen.
Yeah.
Lift the screen up, and you're going to go, holy shit.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense."
That's my hot tip for the day. That's my tech tip.
That was a super good one.
It really works. I've been doing it.
No, definitely.
Ever since I learned that tip years ago, I'm like, here, let me show you. This is your cheater right here.
For sure. Yeah.
And it works very well, because if you put that on a very flat surface, table, bench,
that's usually what I would do.
Your figure 8, all that crud falls down below, and you'll pull that pad up, and it'll be just pristine.
Yeah. Would you put anything on the pad, like alcohol or anything like that? Or
I try not to. It's my personal belief not to do that, but everyone has their own take on it. Some people believe that you can do the alcohol thing if they're really that bad. you need to replace them anyway, in my
Yeah,
experience. So I'm of the opinion that I don't like to use anything in the pad because it is so porous.
Yeah.
Occasionally I will clean the rotor if it's really bad with a little bit of alcohol. And if I don't believe all the alcohol's gone, I'll give it a little heat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I think the
the
way that I
rotor
was,
is so much harder of a material, even though it is porous still, but especially a soft brake pad. Who knows how deep that thing's going and how long stuff's going to stay in there.
yeah, somebody, I don't remember where along the line, but I think for cleaning rotors, I usually use like some kind of like citrus based cleaner and just like a brush, like a, what do you call it? Like almost like a dish brush or something like that. Kind of just brush them off and then probably clean it with alcohol afterwards. Probably what I would do.
Yeah, I tend to just not even do that with the rotors most of the time. I find if my rotor is that bad that I need to do that, I probably need to replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's like I'm always just like not sure. Do I have anything on there? I feel like if I'm just like spraying it with water or alcohol, I don't feel like I'm cleaning it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
maybe I'm going overboard or I'm just not even really doing it. But
no, it's always a hard thing because at the level of what the rotors are, we can't microscopically see what's in there. We're all guessing.
Yeah, 100%.
So it seems like I've had more success taking and deglazing the pad, then putting everything back together, cleaning with alcohol, letting the alcohol burn off, and then rebedding stuff in. It's been working for me.
Right on. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to remember that drywall screen trick.
Drywall screen hands down is one of the best tips I ever got.
It's the way to go. Yeah, sounds like it. As soon as you said it, I was like, that's genius. I like it.
No,
well, man, we're like coming up on 2 hours. Do you like to watch YouTube? Do you watch any? Do you watch that?
I do.
I always ask people at the end of the show what channels that they like to watch, whether it has to do with biking or not, because it's always fun to hear some new channels.
I always like watching biking. I'm also a huge car racing fan, Formula One, NASCAR.
Oh, cool.
Dirt track, whatever. If it's got wheels, I love it.
Yeah.
But one of my other, guilty pleasures that a lot of my friends know and my family know is there's quite a few days that they do. There's a wrestling company called AEW, All Elite Wrestling. I'm an old school wrestling fan.
Oh, yeah. Right on.
Wrestling companies. And tonight they do, TV shows on Wednesday night, but their Monday and Tuesday night show is a YouTube channel.
Oh, that's cool.
And I don't know, just
that's
my guilty pleasure is watching wrestling. It's
it's super fun. That's funny you mentioned the racing. I just watched this thing on Netflix about this dude that was a professional race car driver that was like popped for like he was smuggling drugs like marijuana, and that he like got his basically it's how he built his team, and he was like bringing like 150,000 pounds of pot into the States at a time. And like,
you're gonna have to share that with me.
I'll text you or send you an email later. I have to look and see. I watched it earlier today and I was like, dude, this is crazy.
I gotta know now. Now I'm super curious, dude.
Yeah, I can't think of his name right now. And it's like, I just watched it a couple hours ago. I'll send you an email though. It was interesting. It was definitely like, that's basically how he funded making this race team. And he like won the first year that he was in NASCAR, and then decided he wanted to try to do Indy 500, and he was rookie of the year. And like,
I'm super curious now.
Oh yeah. It was super. It was fun. It was a fun story to watch. So nonetheless, man, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with me, and looking forward to bumping fists in Sedona, and hopefully maybe we'll have a beer together or something like that. But
absolutely.
But thank you very much. It was very informative. There was a lot of good information there. So if any of you guys are going to Sedona, definitely swing by and say hi to Jerry. Otherwise, maybe see you at some other event around the Western US here then. So
absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on and talking about what I love to do, man. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So all you guys that stuck around, do me a favor. If you enjoyed the show, give it a thumbs up. Maybe hit the subscribe button. Don't be that guy that just listens to the show and just splits. Don't hit that button. So do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this podcast and you're like maybe on Apple Podcasts or something like that, and there's a place for you to write a 5-star review, do that. It actually helps spread the love for the podcast, and then other people get to find out about it. Or if you have some friends that listen to podcasts and they like the mountain bike, shoot them over a link, tell them check out the show, and we can get some more people in pulling up a seat at the bar. And so on every Sunday, usually at 5 p.m. we went a little early today, but either way, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook as well, if there's usually before the show, I'll put up a post, let everybody know what time the show is on and who the guest is going to be. So keep an eye out for that. It's another good reason to go swing by and give me a follow over there on the social medias. So that's episode 102. Thanks again, Jerry. I really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Everybody out there, remember one thing: it only takes a bike to be a biker. So get out and be one.